Hey, everybody.
Oh, hi.
Hi. Good to see you guys. Thanks
Great
for
to see
coming on
you.
today.
I was just
So,
reading another chapter.
oh, which one are you reading?
I'm so moved. From grief to gratitude and Grublars.
Yeah, I love her chapter.
Yeah, chapter 10. So I'm just about finished, but yeah, there's so many themes.
Her chapter is kind of funny when I met her. That's why I think the universe has synchronicity of many things. So, Caden's birthday was 9/23. She lost her daughter 23 years ago at 9 months. So,
Wow,
it was interesting how we connected on that front.
that's an incredible parallel.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
glad you're enjoying that chapter. It's a very powerful one.
I am. Like I said, everybody's grief is different. She certainly had a lot of things in place that not everybody will have, right? So uh, a really supportive husband. A few years later, a new daughter born. That was, sort of the living embodiment of her healing and things of that nature. But the words that she says are so grounded in these themes I'm seeing through this book. It's just really amazing.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that because that was the heart of this book that I wanted it to come through is we all have very individual journeys, but we do walk it in similar ways. And I think it's that difference of perspective through this book that really gives us and invites us to travel it by ourselves and really understand our own journey. So I love that you're getting these insights from the book. So
Yeah, and I think there's something here for everyone. So even if one chapter you feel like you know, there were things there that you couldn't quite relate to. The next chapter, you're going to dive in and feel like, it's a perfect representation of exactly what you needed to hear. So I love the variety.
yeah, well, let's see here. My wife is jumping on, so we'll be good. Teresa, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, Chris. Thanks. Nice to see you. And Shalene, nice to see you again. And
Nice.
Christina when she gets here.
Yeah.
What Shalene was saying about, and you were saying about reading the chapters, and it's an individual thing of healing and growth and change. But it's also a beautiful thing to know that you're part of a bigger community that's also experienced the same feelings, maybe in different ways for different reasons, but we are community. We all are community people, and it's a beautiful thing to know that you're not alone when you're going through your own journey. Because too many of us have been isolated while we were processing our emotions and our feelings and the events. But being with other people and knowing that you have support is just outstanding.
Yeah, and I think that's the big part of why this book got put together in the first place was that, and I'll share that with everybody now that I've got my wife on so we can all join this. I'm going to say hi to everybody on Facebook and YouTube right now because we're live streaming across both those platforms. And I just want to thank all of you guys who watch this later on the replay or if you guys are here. Thank you for joining all of us today because this project has been something that's a heart-centered mission. This is not something we just threw together because we felt like it or because we wanted to just write a book for the sake of it. It really came through a very heart-centered process. And the amount of people in this book, there's 23 people in here. It's not just about me. It's not just about my wife. It's 23 people that wrote their stories from a very open, very raw, very vulnerable place. And you guys will find grief and loss in all varieties in this book. And this isn't, by the way, 'cause I got this a lot over the last couple months talking to people. This is not just a sad book about grief. And I say that with intent. This is a very moving, very empowered book. People don't just talk about who they lost, what they lost, how bad it hurt. They also talk about how they navigated through that journey, what got them to where they are today. And they also, by the way, share what I like to call the hidden gifts, lessons, and blessings that came through that grief. And this book really gives grief a full circle view because oftentimes what we hear is that it's a very sad, hurtful, painful event, but we have to move on and let go and get over things. And as I've learned, and I've talked to 120 something people on my podcast, not a single person does that. Nobody does. It's a false reality that somehow is built into our societal pragmatism of life. And I think that when we escape that and we actually get into the place of feeling our grief, giving ourselves an opportunity to explore what that path is giving us, we then have a gift to give back to the world. And that's what's so beautiful about this book is every single author, every single contributor found a purpose and a meaning that was very, very deep. And so I want to share with you guys watching, thank you for supporting all of us. It means so much to me. It means a lot to everybody else that has joined this book. So what I want to share is this book is now on multiple platforms, more than I can share with you guys about. But I will say that it's on Barnes & Noble. It's on Amazon. It's also going to places like Apple Books. It's going across the webs. We originally launched this book on Amazon, ran into some issues with that. I won't go into that because it doesn't matter anymore. But we're on multiple platforms now. This thing is about to get a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. And so we have an opportunity, though, to get out there, like I said, and break this societal influence and pragmatism about grief and show people that grief doesn't have to always be this negative, hurtful, painful thing that we run from. It can actually be the thing that launches us into the next part of our life. And it's something that we carry forward with us, something that has meaning and purpose in our life, and it's something we don't forget. And so I really love to see how all these authors lean into that in this book. So what I want to share with you guys that are watching, by the way, I am offering as we go through the live stream today, if you like this post, share it with your people, and also comment below on a grief experience you had in life. I am doing a giveaway to get a free copy of the book and a free coaching session with me. I want to do this to honor people who have that strength to face it and have the courage that comes through this book. Because I see you, I hear you, and I understand you. And you may not get that in your life right now, but the people you're watching right now on the screen, they see that. They see you. So I want you to know you're not alone. What I want to start off with today, so I can give everybody else a chance to talk. I want to start off with Teresa telling us a little bit about the foreword because she wrote that in our book. It's very, very powerful. I'll just say that. I have a hard time reading it out loud. I get a little choked up. I'm going to have Shalene share a little bit about her chapter. And then what's different about our book launch today, there's a new chapter in this book. And I'm going to leave that for my wife to share with us a little bit later because it is very, very powerful. It's something that was very profound in her healing process. And I'm excited for her to tell us a little bit about that journey. So Teresa, do you want to kick us off by telling everybody a little bit about the foreword in the book and what it was like to write that?
Absolutely. Thank you for the honor of being allowed to write the foreword for the book. We all have our grief journeys, and I didn't realize mine was still continuing. And after reading several of the chapters that you supplied me to be able to get an understanding of where you're going with the book, I realized reading a couple of them that I wasn't finished. My grief journey was continuing, and it was a beautiful thing, though, to recognize the fact that I wasn't done. There were still things that were unhealed. And you know what? They may never be completely healed, but that's okay. We're going towards it. It's a growth process that we're going towards. And reading the one chapter in particular, and I, for the life of me, cannot remember the author's name, but it was about her grandmother. And a lot of my grief was around my grandmother as well. It just brought it full force. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is what this is all about. When you think you're done, you're not. When you think you've got it all under control, there's always something that comes back and says, wait a minute, excuse me, I'm still here. You need to deal with me. You must deal with me. And that was an eye-opening experience for me. So that's what led me to doing the healing work I needed to do. But I also recognized that in writing the foreword, it's an opening, it's a welcoming, it's an introduction to everything that we've done here. And it's a welcoming to the authors the readers that are going to pick up this book and understand and see they're not alone, number one. Grief journeys are different, they are unique, but basically they are all kind of the same. And for me, it was really a profound experience to be able to just give voice to the meaning of what this book was all about, the love and intent and the compassion and the kindness that's wrapped up in this book, and the healing that it offers to the readers that are picking this book up. So thank you so much for giving me that opportunity. I value that.
I just want to say it was an honor to read that forward. My wife can share too that when I first read that, my reaction was like, whoa, I had no idea. And I'm going to preface with you guys too, by the way. Teresa and I have become really good friends since that moment, and I've gotten to learn a little bit about her background and what she went through in her life. And I had no idea about all of that before she wrote a forward. I had no idea. And so it shocked me even more when I got the forward to realize how powerful that was in the book and how well it represented all the stories. And on top of that, to know that the person I chose to write the forward had actually went through lots of trauma, lots of loss in life, lots of grief, more than most people go through. And to know that that person's the one who wrote such a beautiful introduction that invites the reader into the book, and to feel safe and comfortable enough to explore that part of life. It was such an honor. It was a heartfelt moment for me.
Thank you.
The chapter you're talking about too, because I remember it as Jill McLennan's chapter about her grandmother. That one, I purposely ended the book on 23 because that chapter was just so powerful. It was, I was very, my wife and I actually went to my great grandmother's grave for the first time in like 12 years or something, like a long time. And so I was kind of laughing when I was there because I was thinking about that chapter as I read it. And that's the power that this book has. It has a way to just hit you in the right spot, not in a very heavy way, but in a way that opens you up and wants you to move into that moment and move through it. So,
And each chapter will touch you at a different point in your journey. And that's the beauty of it. Shalene, your chapter is outstanding as well. And Christina, I've had the pleasure of reading yours. And my goodness, the beauty, the love, the kindness, and the openness that everyone has given. We've bared our souls. And it's a beautiful thing to let other people know they're not alone. But the healing we've received, or I've received from it, is just outstanding.
I think that's a big part of this grief journey that I've learned is I've never forgotten Tony Robbins' TED Talk. He talks about human needs. We have 6 human needs, and the one that he does talk about is love and connection. He said that's a very, very big need that we have. And when we go through grief and loss and we go through trauma, that human need gets hit really bad. And we oftentimes lose a lot of people, not just because of what we go through. Like Shaleem's going to talk about in a minute. She's lost two men in her life plus her favorite dog. And so we lose a lot of love and connection, but we also at the same time don't always get that replaced in our life in a very easy way. And so I love that this book brought that piece together to make people know they're not alone. They don't have to walk this journey by themselves. If they don't have that in their life for whatever reason, this book can be a means to get that need that. So I think it's a beautiful process there. And so Shalene, I want to feed into you a little bit because you have a very powerful chapter yourself in the book of your loss. I'm gonna let you share about that.
Yeah, thank you. I will in just a second, but I just want to continue what you're saying, that what I love about this book, it's not toxic positivity. It's really a very real, very raw look at grief, and also showing that there can be spiritual growth. There can be gratitude, joy, life, love, laughter, all of these growths amidst it. And Teresa, what you said, how every grief is different, but every grief is the same. What flashed into my mind was like a snowflake, because every snowflake is the same and every snowflake is different. And then the next vision in my mind, honestly, was where does that snowflake fall? If you're a snowflake that's going to fall on the top of Mount Everest, it may be a long and isolated experience. If you're a snowflake that happens to fall in Africa and winds up in a river and you're melted right away, well, your experience is going to be very different, but you were still a snowflake. And so I think grief is very much like that. And yeah, I'm going to start with the very last words that I wrote in my chapter, which is how I summed up my story. And I said, so when does grief begin and when does it end? Grief begins with a loss, and well, it doesn't end. It remains in us for the rest of our lives. And yet, with time, we change how grief resides in us. And eventually we realize that the grief has become something beautiful and valuable, like the love that forged it. And perhaps after all, a broken heart is like a broken mirror with more places to reflect the light. So yeah, I 100% agree. I think everybody in this book, every author has said the same thing, that grief is a teacher if we allow it to be. And my grief story, my chapter, begins with the night that my husband died of cancer. And I wrote a poem. And I'd never written any poems before, but that I did. I sat there by the fire that night and I wrote the poem for his memorial. And from there, I began my grief journey. And I think that we have this thing called anticipatory grief. And certainly I had that the day that my husband and I had the oncology appointment, where they said it's 0% chance of survival and nothing we can do. 3 to 6 months. And we went home to face that. And certainly every single day of that next 3.5 months was a grief experience, but nothing could have prepared me for that emptiness that came once he was gone. And so I wrote through that experience. And one of his deathbed wishes was that I would scatter his ashes from a beautiful high mountain place on our favorite mountain, a place called Illumination Rock. And we were backcountry skiers. So this is, way high up. It's a long day to get there and a long way to ski back down. And then I remember him looking at me and saying, and then when our dog Digby dies, you can scatter his ashes there too. So that day that I scattered my husband's ashes up there, to that point, was the second hardest day of my life. It's an arduous journey physically and emotionally to make it to that place, and it's hard to leave the ashes of somebody that you love deeply, and it just felt so stark and cold and lonely up there. But I had his dog Marley's ashes from before we met, and I was so grateful to leave Marley's ashes up there with him. That really was a blessing and a gift. And then life, moved forward, and I continued to engage in life in a more meaningful way, and re-engage with passions and things of that nature that are really important parts of a grief journey. And wound up moving halfway across the country to Arkansas. And Digby died 2 days shy of the 6-year anniversary of my husband's death. So just like Brad, he died on a cold January day with that back door open and the snow coming in, and took his last breath in my arms. And I had felt very alone for a lot of that time, but I got to tell you, I realized the day that Digby died that I was never alone, because you aren't alone with the dog. And I had been praying for God to give me somebody to lean into. I did not want to face that day alone. I didn't. I was so anxious and desperate not to face that day alone, and I faced it alone. And I came to realize that sometimes we have to face the things that we most fear. And but I knew that I was going to have to get back on my skis, because I had this trip up to Illumination Rock that I needed to take. So I'd been running through all those years, so I knew that I was fit, but I needed to get my ski legs back on. So I booked a couple of ski trips, and on one of those ski trips, a few months later, I fell in love with Bentley. He was tall and handsome and fit, and ex-military, and had the heart of a Boy Scout. He could quote the Boy Scouts creed. And one of our very first conversations was around this journey. I was going to be taken out to the West Coast to go up to this, high mountain place, Illumination Rock. And he said, I'm all in. He said, I've got vacation time. I was about to take it. My only request is that we stop on the way and see my buddy Jim, who's dying of brain cancer. And so in May of 2023, we took off on a road trip, and we stopped in Arizona and spent some time with Jim and his wife. And Jim was dying of brain cancer, but he was still walking and talking. So we knew we had time to go up and do my mission. And what we didn't know was that Bentley had a blocked artery to his heart. And he had a heart attack, and he died in my arms way up high in that mountain. And I came down that mountain a different person. I could write a whole book about the experiences of that day, but I wrote some poetry about it, because I'd been writing my journaling and doing poetry and prose over the course of all of that time. And I couldn't be around people when I came back down that mountain. I couldn't. I retreated to the back of my truck and slept in wild places out there in Oregon and Idaho, and turned to nature for healing and my writing, to just try to gain my equilibrium, because there was trauma involved with this death as well. It was so sudden. And it was, starkly, tragically beautiful to die out there, but it was a very extreme experience for me. So I found solace by big raging rivers and tall stands of trees. And what I found was that nature is very patient. It doesn't rush the process. Its time scale is much different than ours. Nature doesn't care that I was a brokenhearted woman out there, screaming and crying and battling out my anger with God and all these other things that happened out there. But eventually I started to notice the beauty. And you can see that in the things that I write. There's a yellow bird, there's a bird with a yellow head, there's a rainbow, there's the ripples of water across the lake, and began to find my balance again. And so I wrote through that whole entire experience, I think because I had sort of done a deep dive into grief. I'd read a lot of grief books by then. I understood that I had some tools in my toolbox after Bentley died, and I also knew that there was no quick path to healing. And I think sometimes we really want that. We don't want to feel the pain anymore. We want these quantum leaps to the part where we get to feel better. And unfortunately, that's not how it works. We have to feel it to heal it. And so if we avoid it at the time, it's going to raise its ugly head again later. So, writing this chapter was so healing for me. One of the deaths that I didn't talk about in my book that I had published, or even just now, but I did in my chapter, was my best friend Bevan, who, the next summer after my husband died, she was the one friend who became a better friend after he died. And she said things like, "You do grief your way. Like, I love you anyway." She was so just a bright light and so good. And she got a brain virus. I was with her the day we noticed that she couldn't walk straight across the street, and died 6 weeks later. And so she was only 42 years old. She left behind a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. And it was a very extreme experience at that time. And yet I never wrote about it, and I rarely talk about it. And so it was really healing. That was the most healing part of writing my chapter in this book, was to be able to include Bevan and really acknowledge that that was a very dramatic, also part of my grief journey, and a grief that I carry with me still. So I also talk in this book about, the things that we all do to find our healing. And one of those things was publishing my book. And I've written another children's book that just published this year. And I became a grief counselor. And I think finding that sense of purpose, and helping other people to heal is a really beautiful theme.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because this book, Shaleem just wrote this, guys, over the holidays, and it's on Amazon. I just want to say it's an awesome book about grief, by the way. And I know this is my book promotion, but I don't really care. This book was really awesome because it's a children's book about grief. And I never really thought about, we don't really talk about, death with children very much. I remember Christina and I, when we went to my great grandmother's grave, we ended up talking about that, because she lost somebody as well when she was 16, if I remember right. And we talked about how we never really talked about grief that young. It was just like, grandma's no longer here, and that just is what it is. It's a part of life, and we just have to move on. And we never really understood till we went through our circumstances of life that we went, okay, it's a little bit more than just somebody's not here now. So I just want to say, Shaleem, I read Nigel's and the Yellow Ribbon, and it's a book that warmed my heart. It was based out of the PNW, which I loved, but it tied up grief in such an awesome way of how we can still sit in grief and through those emotions, but we can also make new connections and new relationships that move us forward in life, never forgetting. So I thought you did a really good job with that with your book. So
thank you so much. Yeah, it teaches that important word, commemoration, to kids. And kids grief is so near and dear to my heart. I think they're going to mimic how adults act around grief. And so adults, we know they get awkward and they don't know what to say, so they don't say anything at all. And I think that this book can help adults know how to talk to kids about grief because they can read them the book. And it also is going to teach kids how to show up for their friends who are in grief, because some of the animals and these marine animals are grieving, but some of them are just showing up to help the ones that are grieving. And so I think there's a lot of lessons there.
I couldn't agree more with you on that. Mm-hmm. But I'm grateful to have had you in the book. You have such a beautiful story, and I will share with you guys in a surface level way that January is a hard month for Schleems. That's when everything happened. And so I wanted to say thank you for being courageous today to come on here and talk about this in a month of grief. For Christina and I, that month is September, and grief rears its ugly head, whether we like it or not. It shows up and says, I need to be noticed, I need to be seen, I need to be heard. And we have to learn to hold space for it. And so I just wanted to say thank you for jumping on today in this moment, in this time, and sharing your story with us. So what I'm going to share next, guys, my wife's going to talk. I'm really excited because her chapter is chapter 2 in the new book. What I'm going to share, because we took a chapter out, this is actually a suggestion from multiple authors in the book, that my wife writes her side of the story about losing Caden. And I thought that was a very powerful suggestion when we revamped the book. What I am going to share with you guys, this book does lead with my chapter, my experience going through Caden's loss, but my wife not only went through losing a child, but she also went through additional loss behind losing a child. And so it was very powerful to add this chapter to the book because it did talk about a part of loss and grief that is not very well talked about. In fact, it's hidden and buried and ignored and pushed out of the way in so many ways, but it's a part of society that's becoming more predominant and more prevalent, and something that people are trying to learn how to navigate, how to understand. And so her chapter talks a little bit about losing Caden, but also talks a lot about what it's like to be estranged from family and going through narcissistic abuse. And it's a very messy thing. I'm going to let her share her story, by the way. But I just wanted to say that I'm very, very proud of my wife in so many ways. I get choked up a lot when I say it, but if you want to know who created the book cover on this and put all the formatting together and created the bio pages for the authors, the table of contents, wrote the back of the book, my wife did all that work. And so I'm very, very proud of her so much for that. But for her to step in and write this chapter in such a quick turn time and help us relaunch this book, truly amazing individual to do that. And so I'm very, very proud to call her my partner in crime, my wife, and is one of my people I talked to recently, the person I get to annoy the rest of my life. So, my dear, would you like to tell us about your chapter?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, good. Yeah, first I just wanted to quickly say how much I loved your chapter, Shaleem, and how much it spoke to me, especially just that compound loss. It just really broke my heart reading your story and just how, you didn't let it stop you and you kept going. So I just wanted to tell you how much I loved your chapter. And Teresa, too, I mean, it was an amazing thing what all the authors did showing up writing their story, but something about your forward, it just like completed it all. It just like brought it all together, and it was so powerful. And so I just wanted you to know that too, how beautiful I thought that was, and how significant it is in that book. And I'm so glad that it's what leads off that book. Yeah, when Chris started this project and wanted to do this, I was not at a place with my grief that I would be anywhere near ready to tell my story. I'm probably gonna cry, so just be prepared for that.
Okay.
I was still in a very raw place, and I still am with my grief. I spent a lot of time last year just sitting with it and feeling and processing. And one thing that my therapist would say all the time is when your body's ready, it will do the thing. And, for so long I wanted to be ready. Like there was a part of me that was ready, but it just it just wasn't time. And so something about with what happened with everything with our first launch, it just snapped in me, and it just all of a sudden I was ready. And it felt really amazing to just finally be to that point where I could release all that that I've been holding in. For ever since we lost Caden, I knew what his gift was to me. But it was really hard to put it into words because it's complicated. But his greatest gift to me was helping me find my voice. When we were pregnant, it just made me see that, we were growing our family now, and I had to stop. When we're just ourselves, we have to look out for, we tend to tolerate probably more than we should. But when children are involved, something changes. And that's what happened when we got pregnant. And I started to address things with my family. I knew that there were unhealthy dynamics between us and my family. And if we were going to bring a child into that equation, that needed to be addressed. And what happened from that was just unleashing just a side of my family and my mom that, had always been there, but really, really revealed a lot worse than I thought. And it was a very challenging year for us, being pregnant, being in conflict with my family, during a time where, you want support and you want love and you want people to just be there for you and do anything that they can to help you. So it was a very challenging year for us. And that's why it's hard to tell Caden's story without telling that, because it's so intertwined. And it's hard to talk about narcissistic abuse, which is what I eventually figured out my mom was, as a narcissist. And it's hard to talk about that because a lot of people don't understand it. Unlike other forms of abuse, there's no proof to show for it. And I think it's often said that maybe you're being too emotional or you're taking things too personally. Or if people know that person, they tend to see a different side of them and don't understand what you're talking about when you're trying to tell how you feel. And that's kind of what happened to me with my family. And so it is one form of grief and abuse that I think wasn't represented in our book. And I was really proud to be the one to then add that story, because I think it does show another form of grief and another form of abuse that often gets not spoken about. So yeah, I was really, really proud to write that story and finally share that with the world.
I think you did a beautiful job with that chapter, and I'm very happy to see you finally just tell that story, because I've watched it firsthand from the day it happened, and I've always known that you've had a big, big voice in there that needs to get let out. I've always felt that over the years, and I say that because I will share with you guys, that was a soul-crushing moment when we found out he passed. That one, I have a hard time visiting myself because it's so painful. But I can also say that one of the most beautiful things I saw was after she gave birth to him. I watched my wife jump into such a love place. I can't even put words on it to describe it. When she held Caden the first time, it felt like God put up this wall around us. It was just my wife and myself and Caden. The world didn't matter. It was gone. And that's a moment of life I'll never forget. It was just something very beautiful. But like she said, it's hard for us to share this story because it's so intertwined with, lots of narcissistic abuse in that. And it was a very hard place for us as new parents to go through that in a moment of life that should have been very celebrated in a very happy moment, a very happy way, and something that, it's kind of funny looking back on it, to be fair, because like Christina said, when you bring in children into the world, you find out real quick you're not priority anymore. You're just not. You've got a life you have to take care of, and that life relies and depends on you fully for everything that it needs. And so you end up moving from this kind of, I learned it very hard that year, but you move from selfishness to selflessness so fast, and something in your brain shifts all the time where you're not really thinking about you, but you're thinking about, this child, this life that's coming in the world. And so, I saw my wife grow in so many ways that year. My wife used to be a very quiet person, would tolerate and allow a lot of things. She gained her voice, and that's why the lion that you see behind me over here, that's our animal that represents Kate. He's our lion. He gave my wife courage. We saw an Instagram clip a little while ago where there was a father lion that kind of swatted the cub or something when the cub came up to it. And the mom just like very calmly walked over to the father lion, took her paw, and whacked him across the face super hard. And I just saw that strength in my wife when she's still a mom in my eyes, by the way, but when she was going through being pregnant, I saw that come out. I saw the mama lion there all the time. It was not a question if it was there or not. She did everything she could to protect Caden all the time. And it was something very beautiful, something that I honor and I celebrate with her all the time. And so I'm just trying to share with you guys in my long-winded rambles, as I usually do, because you guys know me. This chapter added a depth to the book that wasn't there before. And this is, why I was happy for her to finally share this story, share her perspective, share what she went through, going through narcissistic abuse, going through estrangement with family, not being scared to say these things, because part of the strength of this book is there's many of you guys who are going to watch this video, they're thinking it, but it's never coming out of there for whatever reason. It's staying up here. And, I have a phrase in coaching that when you stay in your head, you're dead. And that's a very powerful phrase. But when you read this book somehow gets it from here and gets it out so that you can actually feel it. You can see it. You can understand it. You can give space for it. And you don't push it away. You allow it to walk beside you. And something I share about grief too, I always say this because Caden does this. Shaleem's having her January month. Mine's in September. My grief sits on my shoulder, and I always say all the time, sometimes it's just nice and quiet. It's just walking beside me. Other times it looks like this. It's just ripping on me hard. And it's in those moments that we can't ignore it. We can't. It has to be, you have to pay attention to it. You have to say, I see you, I hear you, I understand you. What can I do to make you acknowledged right now? You have to do that. And I learned through that, and my wife still gets on me, by the way, when I try to evade grief because she catches it more than I do. That when you do acknowledge your grief, that's what this book will teach you guys. When you do acknowledge it, that yanking calms down. It gets very quiet and it gets very direct with you. And it gives you permission to say that I'm having a hard day with my grief today, and that's okay. I don't need to be anybody else other than who I am today. And I may be having a bad day today, and that's all right. That's okay. I'm learning right now through this grief. You're going to have days, by the way, that you honor and celebrate your grief. There's days you're going to be feeling like a happy, normal person. And you shouldn't have shame or guilt for that, by the way, because that's the part of grief. Grief isn't this linear process of things. Grief is very up and down. And that's something that you guys will see in my wife's story. You'll see that. If you read Shaleem's chapter, you will definitely see that. If you read my chapter, you'll see it. Everybody's chapter in this book will show you that grief is not this flat line. We just walk through it and get over it. It just doesn't happen like that. But when we, I'm so happy for my wife, by the way. She's got her website up. It's cadenscourage.com. And you guys will be able to get the copy of the book there as well. But she has been doing a craft project, and I'd love for her to talk about that. What do you call those origami ornaments that you're making?
Kusudama. It's like they're traditionally, it's like folded paper ornaments. So it's made from multiple pieces. And so it's kind of very symbolic of grief in that sense that, you can take a bunch of broken pieces and form it into something beautiful. And so it's something I've been making since I was in middle school. So, yeah. But
it's beautiful. Yeah. It's multifaceted, which is the way grief is, right? It's a multifaceted experience in life. And that is beautiful, Christina. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's kind of powerful thinking that how it has that correlation with grief. And just going off what Chris was saying, that I think it's so hard, and society just teaches us we have to be like one or the other. If you find, the gifts through your grief, that means you're no longer grieving anymore, and that you can't be doing both at the same time. And I think that's what's so powerful about the book. It shows that like you can find, and for my grief journey in particular, like finding this gift through losing Caden and all that we went through, but that doesn't change the fact that I'm okay that it happened, or doesn't make it like, oh, now I'm fine. And society kind of has that appearance with grief, that toxic positivity, like just power through it kind of thing. And the fact that both those things can be true, and we can hold them both at the same time, is what I think this book shows. So,
Christina, how has it transformed you since you wrote your chapter?
Yeah, I feel like I'm feeling more confident, I guess, just speaking about my loss. I think that was the hardest thing. Is I'm a very emotional person. I carry my emotions through my tears a lot, and it's hard to talk to people if you can't barely talk because you're crying so much. So I think just releasing this and getting the story out is kind of, I'm still crying, but I'm able to speak a little more and get those words out. And yeah, there's just a lot of peace that has come with it, and freedom, I guess you could say, just from releasing that. Yeah.
Beautiful.
I just want to say thank you so much for Christina for speaking about the abuse that you've lived through. I think that that one of the big words right now in grief is like resilience, and that if we have resilience, we're going to come through grief. But me being a grief counselor, I know Chris being a grief and acceptance coach, we see that not everybody has the same amount of resilience, and part of what gives us our resilience was a really a stable and loving environment in our early childhood. And so if we've had adverse experiences in life, the resilience isn't built into the equation in quite the same way. And so grief needs to be validated. And I think that if somebody's coming through grief pretty good and they've got a lot of resilience and they've got a lot of support around them, they might not be the ones who find their way to this book, but somebody who needs to be validated, like it hasn't been easy. And now this grief just feels like, it's something that's, giving them a punch in the gut that's really like taken a lot of their resilience away. I just really appreciate that you're adding this element to it, because this is a very real element that people have, extremely dysfunctional experiences with the people around them that are supposed to be supportive and loving. And I think it's going to really help people feel validated who also have those experiences that make their grief more complex.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned this past year was that, I thought that I had more of a loving and supportive family. And that's kind of what part of that abuse has done to me growing up, is convinced me that my upbringing was normal, was okay. Like, I think I always thought people had it worse than me. And,
right.
walking away from my family was the best thing I could ever do for myself, because it finally broke that chain. So I could finally start seeing and healing. And it's just been a roller coaster of ups and downs since that moment of just awareness and just starting to remember my past a little bit more and realizing what was really there, and how unhealthy it really was. And that's been just like compounding grief, more coming from that. Just the grief is just never ending. And I don't think it will, because as I process all that, it just will keep on coming, and that's okay.
Well, we never know our own strength until it's tested, just like we never know our own faith until it's tested. And so truly your strength is being tested. And, that what I see is just an incredible light that you're shining.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot.
Caden gave us a big gift. big one. And it was,
Yeah.
I used to call it the gift in shitty wrapping paper. Now I see it as the beautiful, beautiful gift that I never could have seen coming, and it continues to give. And, you know, I will share with you guys, you know, this book never would have happened, by the way, if I hadn't lost Caden. If Christine and I hadn't lost Caden, it would never have come. I would never probably have met Teresa or Shalem or any of the other authors in this book. And we never, by the way, would have created a book like this that's one of a kind. It's unique. I haven't seen a grief book written like this and in such an open, raw, honest format that's not sugarcoating. And like Shalene said, toxic positivity is not in this book. It's just not, because this is written from heart. It's written from soul. It's written from the depth of what people have walked through in life and their honesty to say, it's not this pretty, shiny thing. It's ugly sometimes, and it's rough, and it's brutal, and it's testing. But we can also say at the same time, we do reach a point in that grief journey where we discover our gifts and our lessons and our blessings. And I truly believe, you know, and I wanted to share this as we start wrapping up, I truly believe that any of you guys going through grief and loss and trauma in whatever way, shape, or form that comes, I want you to hear something very loud. You have a gift in that. Every single one of you. I don't care what your background is, where you live, where you're from, any of that stuff. Every one of you that has gone through that has a gift. And I hope that you find it, or give yourself the opportunity to find it, because you will end up in the same place that we all are in this book, that we're actually able to go out there and help other people, because there's people standing where we once stood. There is. You know, I'll share, when we lost Caden, I felt like we were the only people on the planet that lost a child. I found out very quickly that 120,000 stillbirths happen every year in America, just in America, not even the rest of the world. And when you can put that in perspective, that 120,000 other people are walking your journey just like you. And if you found a way through that somehow, you found the lesson through that, you found the gift that you carry, and you're able to help even 1% of that, that's a powerful, powerful thing that you got through that experience. And so, like Christina says, because my wife, she'll tell you she's not over it. She's not going to get over it. It doesn't exist. She still has a lot of pain, and I still do too. But that doesn't mean that we can't go out there and help other people. We can't support other people. It really means the opposite of that. It means we go out there and show people, I've been where you once stood. I know what this is like. And I'm not here to say that I know your experience fully, but I want to walk beside you. I want to hold space for you where other people won't. I want to show you a way to find your gift, find your blessing, because I want you to go out in the world and know that you have purpose through pain. You have purpose through the suffering, purpose through the grief. There's always a meaning to it. And I think when we find that, you know, it doesn't take away pain. It doesn't take away the hardness of it. It doesn't, but it makes us feel just a little bit better as we walk the path. And I will say that little bit I've felt from every author. I felt that when I read my wife's chapter. I felt it when I read the foreword. I felt that when Shalene wrote her chapter. It's that little tiny bit. And when we can hang on to that, that's the faith, that's the hope we have, that we can continue forward. So I want to thank all of you guys who have watched the live today. If you're watching this as a replay, please reach out to the authors, reach out to Shalene, reach out to my wife, reach out to Teresa, reach out to the other authors in the book. You guys can join our Facebook group, the Empowered Grief Collective on Facebook. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You guys can join. I want people in that group who need a safe space to just share their story and be who they need to be. You don't have to be anybody special to join our group. We take everybody, every walk of life, doesn't matter. Because the point of this group is to show people that we're not alone. We're a community of people. And I think that that sense of community, that sense of heart and soul can pull us out of the depths of grief when it's very, very hard. And just, we can find so much meaning through that. So I want to thank all of you guys for joining me today, Shalene, Teresa, and my wife. Thank you guys for jumping on and sharing your contributions to the book. This book would not be, it would not be what it is without you guys. It just wouldn't. And so just want to say thank you.
Thank you,
I
Chris.
want to say how proud I am of you. And if you hadn't made this decision to do this book, none of this would have happened, and the ripple effect that you've had from this. I know we talk about that a lot, but it's huge, and it's just getting started. So yeah, I'm very proud of you.
Absolutely. It's part of the legacy, isn't it?
It really is. I know I didn't really talk about that on this live, but I started this about a year ago. I wanted to make a legacy for Caden because the hardest part that I had, and God, I'm going to cry saying this, but in many ways that year after we lost him, it really felt like it was just a thing that happened. It was an experience that I went through in life, and I couldn't accept that. I really couldn't. That one, I absolutely said, no, I can't do that. So I want a legacy for him, and I want people to know who he is and his story and what we've gone through. And that's what I said will make me happy. That will make me find some purpose and some meaning through this journey that I'm on. And so I'm just grateful that I had so many people join me on that. And this is why I also love this book. Yes, it's centered around my story up front, but there's 23 stories in here, and they're just as powerful. So I have a hard time saying that because this book is so powerful. There's 23 stories in this book that are just they'll hit your heart in the right place. They're not going to tell you what to do or how to fix it, but they're going to guide you on that path. And so just thank you for the support. It just means a lot to me. So as we wrap up today, as I'm getting freaking choked up, I'm just so proud of this book. I'm proud of everybody that was participant in it. I have my heart's pounding through my chest right now because I know the hard work that everybody put into this book. I know it. I saw it. And it's such a great group of people. I couldn't have asked for better people to meet on this journey. If you guys want to purchase a copy of the book, it's on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Noble. I've got it distributed through a lot of different websites. So if you guys Google the Empowered Grief Journey, I'm sure you guys will find it. It's going out on Kobo, which is Barnes & Noble's ebook platform soon. It's going out on Apple Books. It's going to indie bookstores. I will be going to, my wife's going to join me on this. We're going to go to hospitals to talk to their grief counselors and their gift shops. We're going to connect with other grief counselors in the area, but this book is out there to change lives. And this is, I just know it from the stories I've read. I've read every chapter probably 5 or 10 times in the editing process, literally. And I can tell you right now, I never got bored reading one. I always learned something new every single time I read it. I found that place when I was having a hard day or a hard time, this thing brought comfort in ways that I couldn't find. And so I want you guys to know that if you know somebody who's going through a loss right now, going through grief right now, somebody who's standing where you once stood, get this book to them. Give them an opportunity to help themselves take one step forward. That's all it is. So I just want to say, I'll post the links down below in the comments on Facebook so you guys can know where to find it. But thank you again for joining us today on this. We'll be back some more videos next week to continue sharing a little bit more about the book. And other than that, if you are on a grief journey, I want you to know it's not the end. It is the beginning. It's very hard in the beginning, by the way, as a lot of us can share. But focus on one step forward at a time, just one step. And take that one step a day. That's it. Don't worry about being fully healed. Don't worry about fixing everything. Take one step at a time and honor your journey. So,
well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone. We'll talk soon. We'll be back.